Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to the Connections podcast, where we talk about maintaining our relationships on Allah's terms. I'm your host, Fatma Qadri, here with my co-host, Dr. Fariha Khan. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullah.
So I really benefited from our conversation about inheritance last time. And I thought we could take a segue on a similar topic, but also get deeper into like the role of the male to spending on their mahram relatives and the women that they are accountable for in their lives. We slightly touched this topic, but I think it's very relevant for the time that we live in. And then you had shared some thoughts with me like off our recording as well, so I thought maybe we could pick up right there.
Okay. About what?
About men, we talked about how men are responsible for their mahram relatives and like how this is part of the reason why they get a different amount in inheritance, because they're accountable for certain women folk in their life that Allah has prescribed them to care for and to be accountable for.
All right.
And yeah.
Okay, yeah. So Bismillah, I think so there's a lot that can be said about the spending of men. But one of the things that I was thinking about after we did that session last time, and we had talked about, you had asked me specifically about, well, the big elephant in the room is why do the daughters get half the share of the sons? And, within from the wealth of their parents, the inherited wealth of their parents. And, we talked a little bit about the fact that it makes sense within the broader Islamic paradigm for how social, how the like the how does the family setup work, and what is the role of men in society, and what is the responsibility of the man. But I felt like we could talk about that a little bit more. So I was thinking I would read to you the hadith that we're focusing on today. The hadith that I wanted to bring up in the context of this was when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he stated, "O son of Adam, verily to spend on others is better for you, and to hold on to your wealth is worse for you. You won't be blamed for just enough. And begin in your charity with those you are responsible for and supporting." He said, "Wabda biman ta'ul," those who start your spending, your charity on those who you are responsible for and supporting, and the upper hand is superior than the lower hand, right? So in this hadith, you kind of get like very clear guidelines, which the ulama, of course, they explain when you look at other teachings from the Quran, ayat of the Quran, and other hadith. This is expanded. What are the meanings that are actually being conveyed through this very concise and like very comprehensive teaching of the Prophet ﷺ. But essentially, like men are being told by the Prophet ﷺ in this hadith, don't be stingy, don't be hoarding your wealth, right? Um, and and uh and how do you start with that spending? It tells you where you start. It tells you how not to go overboard in your spending. And it also praises the one who is spending, essentially the one who is spending for the sake of Allah. So, I thought we would just look at this hadith a little bit today.
Can you expand on that phrase, and to hold it is worse for you?
Okay. Well, so we'd have to hear the whole of it. So it's better for you to spend, right? Why? Because actually, you're right. So if we talk about the sharrun luck, you understand when it is khair. So when is it bad for you to hold on to your wealth? The commentators on this hadith, they mention the fact that why is it bad for you to hold on to your wealth? Because there's two ways essentially as a Muslim that you can spend your wealth. And here we're talking specifically about men, because the spending of women is actually completely different in the way it's picturized and conceptualized. Um, so I don't know if we can maybe refer to that later on if there's time. But so we're talking essentially about the spending of men, and there's two ways that a Muslim man can spend his wealth legitimately, or not legitimately necessarily, but in a way that is to his favor. And when is something to the favor of a Muslim when it's going to count for him in the next world, right? Otherwise, it's meaningless. So, you buying yourself an ice cream, okay, it's mubah, you can do it, it's permissible, but it's not counting for you or against you. It's not getting you any points in the akhirah. Um, let's say you buy yourself an ice cream with the niyyah that I have a little money and I haven't had a treat in a long time and I want to really have great shukr to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the ni'mas that He's given me. And you buy the ice cream and you eat it with the Bismillah and you're grateful to Allah for Him that He allowed you to have this when so many people are deprived, right? That's you're going into a different place, right? You made the intention and now it could even be in your favor that you had an ice cream. But essentially, how are you going to use your wealth? You can use it to fulfill your obligations, which are your fara'id, like what is fard on you to spend on. Or you can spend it on nawafil, like on supererogatory works, like extra credit stuff that's not required of you by the deen. And the ulama say that for you to hold on to it, you're either incurring sin because you were supposed to have spent on your obligations and you didn't, like your wife, your kids, you're a deadbeat dad, billah, or something like that, right? You didn't spend the way you should have to take care of your family, or any other obligations that might be there in your life, then you are sinful. So it's sharrun laka, it's bad for you. Or, okay, you have this wealth, you've taken care of your basic obligations, everybody's clothed and fed and housed, but you could have helped out your neighbor. You could have helped out your family, your extended family, or your wife's family, or you could have helped build the masjid in your neighborhood, or etc. There's so many other ways that you could have spent that wealth and you didn't. And so the potential that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala placed in your wealth for getting you higher degrees and higher reward in Jannah, you squandered that. Like you could have reached a higher place or you could have reached higher reward. And he gave you the means to do that and you didn't use it in that way. So you just basically messed yourself up. Also, you didn't sin, you're not going to get punished, but you're also not going to get the high reward that you could have gotten. So this is also sharrun laka. That does that answer your
Yeah,
question? Yeah.
it's such a beautiful mindset because it actually it like it speaks to like so many different personalities. Like for example, there can be somebody who's very generous. It's very natural for them to spend, but then their intention has to be for Allah. So it corrects that person. And then there's people who like to just hoard and save money, and because they're sometimes people can get obsessed with just saving money and holding on to their cash,
Mm-hmm.
whereas or their earnings or whatever. So it speaks to that person to spend generously, like this is better for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also that person that probably like wonders, this is excessive spending, this is israf, my family doesn't need ice cream at the ice cream shop, like and changes their mindset to no, like this is khair for you to spend on your family, like this is something that Allah loves from you. And so whatever your mindset might be with finances or money or earnings, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has like created a proper intention and how to go about it.
Yeah, mashallah, that's really beautiful. I mean, there's actually a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where he said if a Muslim man, basically, if a Muslim spends on his family seeking reward from Allah, it is charity for him. It is sadaqah for him. And I specify man, I mean, if a woman is spending on her family, it will also be sadaqah. That doesn't mean she will not be rewarded. That, if she makes a niyyah for Allah and she spends, she would be rewarded too. But why specify the man? Because he has this role of being the breadwinner that is written into the command, that is written into the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like he has to be the breadwinner. If he's not, he's sinful. If a woman is not the breadwinner, she's not sinful. If she's not providing for her family, she's not sinful. And the expectation also socially, even up to today to some extent, the expectation is the man is the one who's going to provide for his family. When a woman does it, it's like, oh wow, she's so strong, she did it. Like even despite the fact that she was widowed or she had a difficult life, mashallah, and people really see that as an unusual feat on her behalf. But um if for the man, it's just that's what you're supposed to do. And so it's almost like Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is
Mm.
encouraging the man to really, you're going to do this anyways. Like we had the hadith last time in the inheritance part, you know, just lifting the morsel to your wife's mouth. There are different riwayas of that hadith. In one of the riwayas, the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam actually uses the word sadaqah. It is sadaqah for you to give the nafaqah, the expenditure, the basic, taking care of the basic needs of your wife. Is sadaqah. Why would he say that? Because we don't think I'm gonna get a this is like a good deed. Or at least maybe now we would, because the natural understanding that the man is just supposed to do this is kind of leaving us. But in societies where it's been it's just obvious, of course, the man is the one who's going to be supporting his family. The to be told, listen, you're doing this and you're actually going to be rewarded. It's as sadaqah, it's as good a deed as the sadaqah you give to other people, those who are in need, or those trying to gain the reward of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
SubhanAllah, like while you were explaining, I was thinking how it's human nature to love and to respond to a generous leader also. And the father is the Amir of the family. And Allah is like promoting the attribute of generosity as a leader also, because your family is going to respond to you with more love and more softness if you show them that characteristic.
Mashallah.
SubhanAllah.
Yeah, no, that's really nice. Mashallah. There's Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, he was known as being someone who spends so much in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that no wealth has benefited me more than the wealth of Abu Bakr. Or I have not found, it's something along those lines. Like I haven't found as much barakah or as much good in the wealth of anyone as the wealth of Abu Bakr. And when Sayyidina Abu Bakr heard that, he started crying. And he started weeping, and he was like, Ya Rasulullah, is my life and my wealth for anyone other than you? And so it's like, he's so lucky that he got the appreciation and the
SubhanAllah.
honor of the Prophet ﷺ by spending in the way that he did. And you're right. Like anyone who is going to be on the receiving end is going to feel beholden, appreciative, in awe, want to follow the person who is really spending on you with a good, generous, loving hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, subhanallah.
SubhanAllah.
Okay, but what's
Yeah.
what's in this hadith though also, if you notice, so yes, spending is really good, holding on is really bad, but then there are some directions here about exactly how that works, right? So for example, the next statement that Prophet ﷺ said after that was, وَلَا تُلَامْ عَلَى كَفَافٍ, that you are not blamed, it's not blameworthy for you to hold on to what's just enough, kafaf. And uh so it's not like you just spend in such a way that your family is left with nothing. That you spend in such a way that your family feels vulnerable or nervous. There are people who are like that. I mean, you might have seen some where
Mm-hmm.
people, they were very, very generous on the community level, but it was almost to a fault, so that it's like the things that they needed to take care of for their kids, their schooling, to live in a decent place where they're safe, they weren't really doing that well. Um, and this is a statement from the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam warning
Mhm.
against that, because the commentators on this part of the hadith, they say, what is kafaf? It is how much you need to continue to have qanaat, like contentment, like just to be, you feel safe, like you don't feel like, gosh, if this paycheck doesn't come in, I don't know what's going to happen. You're not in that situation, right? That you try to not be in that situation, and that the kafaf is what is needed to take care of the needs of your family in your household, yourself, your spouse, al-ahl, and your children. So
SubhanAllah.
it's pretty neat, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, mashallah.
Sometimes I feel like that's not talked about enough too. you
Yeah,
know, I mean, there are some really big spenders, and you're like, mashallah, everybody's really proud of them in the community, but then it's like behind closed doors.
I mean, their families are the ones that would know that, and
Yeah,
you can imagine, especially if you're a young child, like that would be so hurtful. Like almost like you're not as important as the community to your father.
yeah, that'll help us. I mean, and then the next part says, start with your family. And what's interesting is that we have in here a program of spending for how men are supposed to be spending their wealth. But there's not only an encouragement to spend, there's also what they say is a tartib al-ibtida, like from where do you, like setting your priorities in the spending. Who do you start with? What's the tartib that you use, and where do you begin, and then who's next and who's next? Um, and one of the things when we were talking about the inheritance thing, and we mentioned that hadith of Sayyidina Sa'd radiallahu anh. This was a man who was like one of the 10 promised paradise, like he's one of the great Sahaba, and he was the one who went and opened Persia for Islam, like this whole immense part of the Muslim world that became such a tremendously critical part of our civilization. He's the one who opened it. He was the leader of the army, who opened those lands. So in that hadith, remember when he was like telling Rasulullah, he thought he was going to die. This was earlier in his life, and he thought he was so sick he's going to die. And he's like, I have a lot of wealth. I only have one person who's going to be inheriting from me, my daughter. Can I just give my wealth away in sadaqah? Like, why? Because he wants to like rack up as many points as he can before he meets Allah, right? And Rasulullah's like, no, straight. And he's like, okay, can I give half? He's like, no, can I give a third? Some riwayas say he mentioned a third. Some say the Prophet said, okay, a third, but a third is a lot. And it's like, we talked about the fact that you're supposed to be spending on your family, but the rest of that hadith, if you look at the rest of that hadith, the Prophet ﷺ goes on at the latter part, and he starts making dua for Sayyidina Sa'd, and he in a way where he says, it could be that you will have a long life such that the Muslims will benefit from you. Excuse me, the Muslims will benefit from you, and the the mushrikeen, or like the kuffar, will be harmed by you. And that's exactly what happened in his life, right? That he didn't just spend on his family, but he had to start with his family. He had to make sure that his family, the daughter is mentioned in that hadith, the wife is mentioned in that hadith. And then the Prophet, after that's taken care of, right? The Prophet says, and may it be that you benefit the whole of Islam by what you spend of yourself, of your wealth, of your life, of your everything. So, it's each person according to his ability is called on to be spending essentially, and not holding. And holding is of no benefit.
And the hadith specifically mentions his daughter
And the wife too.
and the
Because
wife. Yeah,
remember when he says, Prophet ﷺ said, even what you spend, even in giving a morsel of food to your wife, this is sadaqah, or this is good for you, depending on the riwayah.
subhanallah. So, if I may, I just want to break into a little bit of another topic, like slightly off course. But so imagine like you are like a modern woman and you have your own money and you're earning your own money. How does this play into? Let's just say hypothetically, I don't need my mahram to spend on me.
Mm-hmm.
Then am I like am I withholding like an opportunity for them to full their fard, like or
Fulfill
fulfill
their part.
yeah or fulfill this the nawafil spending on me when I'm like because I maybe if I'm earning my own money or I don't want to take from somebody else. I don't want to take from my brother or
Your husband.
my husband, my father, yeah, like depending on whatever situation I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
So how does this play into action for women who are already in our times like earning on their
Mm-hmm.
own and not wanting to be dependent?
Yeah, that opens a really big topic. But I mean, first of all, I think what needs to be stated is that our deen is so encompassing and it's so vast that it's not like a woman who, let's say a woman is independently wealthy, right? Or a woman is in our day, she's a career person. Let's say she's a physician. She makes a lot of money. There's nothing at all in the deen that would say she shouldn't marry anyone except someone who's going to make more than her and who will be able to spend more on her than what she could spend on herself or something like that, right? Like there's no
Yeah.
such religious obligation. The religious obligation is for you to marry to take care of your sexual need and to make sure that you will fulfill the right of your partner. And those rights are very varied. It's not just it's the physical needs, it's the monetary needs, but then there are other needs as well, which are more subtle and which we don't necessarily talk about. So, like the emotional needs of each other are part of what needs to be fulfilled between a husband and a wife. We're talking here specifically about that relationship. So, between a husband and a wife. And, I think that, let's say a woman gets married, she marries a capable man. I mean, so you see, like in the legal tradition, in the fiqh books, what's there is that the woman is entitled to marry someone who is kufu for her, which is like on her level, like her social level. You know about this,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like she and her father, because of the respectability of their family and like how their social status or their social class, as Muslims, and we don't have a problem with social class. Like we're not Marxist or something, right? Like we understand that there are people who have more and people who have less, and because of that, they have different expectations. They have different ways that they're living. I mean, if you've been around someone ever who's like really, really wealthy, she might not actually be a very dunyawi person. It's just she's not used to riding on a horse rather than riding in a car type of thing, right? Like it's just she doesn't know how to do that. She doesn't know how to go in the kitchen and cook in the same way without household help in the way that when, some of us might be. So the Sharia accounts for that. We don't hold it against people who are wealthy to live a wealthy lifestyle. And so the woman has a right to seek someone who will be able to fulfill her social needs in the way that her family did before she married. And the same goes for her dad, for him to expect that for his daughter, because he's worried that she should not end up dissatisfied and disillusioned from that marriage 10 years down the road and come back home saying, I can't handle it, right? So, so we have that. But at the same time, that right is something that they can choose to hold on to for themselves. But a woman who sees a righteous, pious person and wants to marry him, and he is able to fulfill his masculine duty as the supporter of the household, but perhaps not at the level that she wants, she can give up that right. But she has to she has to understand that she's giving up that right when she's marrying that man, right? Because, okay, he marries her and then wants to start having children. He wants her to be spending more time at home. And she's someone who wants to be out working, right? And she wants to be living at a higher standard than what he thinks is just fine for them. I think it's just fine we live in a townhouse. I think it's just fine if we rent this apartment. It's a nice, clean, good apartment. It's good area, healthy, safe. I think we should live here. And she's like, what are you talking about? I want to live in that 5-bedroom house, right? And I need to make the money. If you can't do it, I'll make the money for it. And the woman will think, well, I'm making the money. What's his problem? But no, some of the responsibility that accrues to her is to give up that level of control and allow herself to be taken care of through the spending of her man. And men
I mean,
of
unless like he's on the same page as her and he's okay with her contributing financially and then
yeah.
buying together.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, because then
if they have an agreement within them among themselves, where let's say they marry with that agreement, that I make 70,000 a year, you make 250,000 a year. Um, what are we gonna do with that? Like, and she says, I would like to be the one who buys the house, for example. Um, and or whatever it is, people have different ways of working that out. If they are in agreement and there's no discord between them that would hurt the family environment, then it's fine. But we can't have a woman who necessarily, outside of whatever places where they have been in agreement, if she begins to want more expenditure, even if she's willing to do that expenditure herself, it's not her right. If he says, no, I'm sorry, you're working too much, you need to be home more, she's supposed to be home more. And she has to understand that that's going to be his call as the qawwam of the household. And similarly, on the other side, she's gone into the marriage saying, okay, I'm a physician, I'm going to make 250 a year and stuff. And then she finds, I just can't handle this with kids. I thought I would be able to. I saw other people doing it, but I didn't realize it's really hard and I don't want to do this anymore. He can't force her to continue. So
yeah.
the spending of the men is really what is supposed to hold up that family. And there will be times when whatever agreements you had, they're gonna start getting shaky, right? And so at that point, where do you go? The believing, pious, God-fearing person, man or woman, goes back to what did Allah say and what did His Messenger say? And that is the man has to spend and the woman has to abide by like take that like put herself in a vulnerable position and not try to be the one who's empowered and trying to like push everybody around towards her vision of life.
SubhanAllah, you mentioned like both sides of the problem, because one is like on one side, I'm, not accepting that your husband is the Amir and he does have a right to make those calls. But at the same time, like, and I feel like currently we're putting so much pressure on women to earn. Whereas if someone says, I actually want to stay home and just take care of the kids, like, she can be met by a lot of pressure from her husband and even her in-laws. Or like, we chose you as a daughter-in-law because you're going to be a doctor. How can you abandon like as if it was a promise to everyone else, and she can't have a change of change
Yeah.
of heart
I
and,
mean,
and how she wants to
yeah,
spend her days.
it's just very low and disgusting behavior. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Like it's really unfortunate that we've come to that place. It's really interesting, Fatma. In my academic work, I work on like Islam and South Asia and stuff, and one of the scholars who I study is like a early Deobandi scholar named Ashraf Ali Tanwi, rahmatullah alayh. And one of the things he said in one of his talks, like I guess he was giving a talk to his murids or speaking with one of his murids, and he said, all these women, they want to go out and they want to work and be out of the house. And there's going to come a time when they're going to want to be back in the house, but they won't be able to, you know? And it's like, it's almost like we've entered that phase now where the woman wants to be back in the house, but there's so much. I don't know what he meant by she won't be able to. I think, unfortunately, like the kind of ribbly, deeply interest-based, exploitative economic systems that we all live in now just make it really hard for a man to be the sole provider. You know, I mean, even my own sheikh, when I first started studying with him like 15, 20 years ago, he he would say, you know, it should be the man being the breadwinner, the woman should stay at home as much as she can, especially when in the phase of raising the children. And now, depending, particularly when he's speaking to audiences in like the Muslim world, it's really tough to just have a basic livelihood on one salary, you know. And so he says now his statement is slightly shifted, where it's like, okay, you might need to have two incomes because just the system is so messed up now. You can't even afford to have a basic household and food and everything for your home and your basic needs taken care of. But even there, you know, some of the examples that I just mentioned, they still apply. Like at the decision-making part of what happens in the family, of how much she works, and what is you know, how much is really required of her. If the man is not taking into account the effect of her working on the whole big picture of their family, like how is this affecting my kids? How is this affecting the tarbiyah of my kids? How is this affecting myself? Am I getting enough time with my wife that I'm not feeling sexually frustrated because she's always working? And so here I am surfing the net all the time when she's out on call. I mean, you are, as a man, you could be frustrated with your wife, but you're the one who put her there, right? Um, and you're going to be responsible for that because if she's out there with your permission or with your requirement, and you are not now starting to feel neglected, well, you should have taken that. You need to. If you haven't, you need to now take that into account and change the situation. And figure out what you need to do as a man to so that she doesn't have to be away from you so much and that you're not frustrated. You see, so like there's so many different factors, and the qiwama, the leadership management role of the husband in the house, is not just about who spends what and how much and who's going to work. It's like, what else is happening in this household? Are we in a place of serenity? Are my kids feeling fulfilled and happy and safe? Myself, my wife, you know, the rest of, you know, I might have other obligations. I might have parents who are needing me. There might be other people around us who need us. You know, what are we doing? How am I directing the role of this through my own very concrete spending role first and foremost, and then the rest of it, that's going to make this work.
You know, when you put the Sharia at the center, like of what Allah has commanded you to do this, it really takes care of also the etiquette and the way that you're approaching the situation. Like if like for example how you said like how the man has to advocate that his needs are not being met, or you know the house is sort of falling apart with her absence, etc. Like he has to go
And
about it.
he's going to answer for that, Fatma. You know, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, "Qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara," like protect yourselves and your families from the fire, right? If your kid is so neglected that neither parent can keep an eye on him, and he is getting into some really weird stuff, you as the man is the first one who's responsible, right? And so, um, you know, if you can't be directing your family and bringing home enough money that your wife can, let's say you're not able because you need to bring home the money, you need to be able to give the space and the safety that your wife can at least keep an eye out. And even then, I mean, even then, the ulama say, even if he is the one who is working a lot, he's not absolved of looking after the the rest of the, you know, the tarbawi needs, for example, of his children. He needs to be doing their tarbiyah still. He needs to be spending time still. So, and that's part of the spending of men as well. The time that you spend on your kids and your wife and your household. And then beyond this, you know, as we saw in that earlier hadith, the one I mentioned with Sayyidina Sa'ad, and the Prophet ﷺ making dua for him, that he would go out and he would benefit everyone, right? Like, not everyone is in a place where they have that, this is part of your risk too, the sustenance that Allah has decreed for you. I mean, some men and women will have a lot of excess wealth, a lot of excess time, and they can do beyond just their household. And then some of them won't, but uh to hold on to what you've been given and not use it first towards your fard and then towards extra nawafil stuff, it causes problems on so many different levels. I'm sorry, I think I cut you
SubhanAllah.
off. Astaghfirullah.
Yeah, no, not at all, not at all. No, it's I mean, you said what more than what I was planning on saying, but also like I think sometimes the some of the older aunties in our community will say that you guys, your generation is like uh the girls, they're just saying like you're so short with disputes because you don't feel like a financial dependency on your husbands. But I mean, perhaps that's true, but I'm just thinking that in your heart, when you know that Allah has appointed the your husband, to take care of your financial needs, then that will prevent you from feeling some sort of like superiority in the fact that you make more money or that you don't need his money, because the fact that Allah has given him that role will check you before you you might say like something hurtful. You might like flaunt that I don't even need this guy. Like, why am I putting up with him?
Mm-hmm. You
You know,
think of
like it,
divorce much sooner than
yeah,
few
much
months.
sooner. And
Mm-hmm.
and you we can easily play into those feminist like phrases, or those statements that are made that, yeah, like I don't need him, like I don't need a man to take care of me, kind of thing. But and maybe, and while that it might be true, you probably don't need a man to take care of you. It also checks you to say where Allah says, but I have appointed him to do this for you, and
Mm-hmm.
this is, and receiving with obedience is as important as giving with obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the center.
Yeah, that's really nice. Subhanallah. And I mean, essentially what you're talking about, Fatma, is taqwa, right? You're talking about being God-fearing. And this issue of the spending of men requires taqwa on the part of the men, first and foremost, that they need to know that they are accountable and that they must spend, and that it's sharrun lahum, like it's bad for them if they don't spend. They need to have that really clearly ingrained. And part of, a big aspect of that comes, or a big way of acquiring that understanding is through the way they were raised and the way they saw their men in their household and in their family spend. And then if they didn't see men spending, those young men had to expend extra effort in understanding and learning, keeping company with men who do it right, so that they, or and asking people, like for example, murabbis, people who have, shuyukh who teach tasawwuf, for example, or just the basic akhlaq of the deen, and who themselves are men. You can differentiate between a scholar who is working on himself and a scholar who just enumerates things, like who just like tells you what the rules are. You go to those people who what you can see the practice of the deen on them and in their heart, and you have to figure out how to do that. But taqwa is required on the man, and then taqwa is required on the woman. That you do realize he has been given a daraja over you, that he is the qawam of your household, and that he has to be the one who makes decisions with your consultation, but at the end he makes decisions on how the expenditures go within the house. And it also, not along with taqwa, it also requires protecting your heart from hirs, or greed, and like dunya,
Yeah,
because
and
if
arrogance too.
an
Sorry, I said
arrogance,
and arrogance.
why arrogance?
No, like, I mean, speaking to what we were saying earlier about, just putting yourself and the way you want to do things at the center versus the way you're supposed to.
But like, let's say, for example, both the man and the woman really, really want that really big house in that fancy suburb, and they both really want the nice car, each of them. And they want, there are men out there who are happy to be seen driving a certain car and their wife to be driving a certain car and her to have a certain kind of ring on her finger. They find some kind of pleasure in that, right? And they're both that's and she's finding pleasure in it. She wants that diamond on her finger and she wants that car too. And so they're both on the same page, let's say, we're gonna do this together, whatever it takes. But then other aspects of their marriage are going down the drain. In that case, their joint cooperative mission to make it in the world is gonna come back to bite them in the akhirah, both of them. Because, if your kids suffered, if they felt neglected, emotionally neglected, if they didn't get the tarbiyah that was needed, you allowed society, secular, atheist, um, selfish, individualistic society to do the upbringing of your children, and they end up when they're 20 years old saying, I don't believe in God, I don't, or whatever it is. What is gonna be your default state? It's gonna be, oh well, I mean, it's his choice. You're gonna have to acquire the liberal things that will make you feel better about the mistakes that you made, right? So part of this idea of spending also entails not not reaching for too high of the dunya. There's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. I apologize if I don't have the words right, but it's essentially to the effect that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down wealth to human beings so that it could be spent to establish the prayer and to establish the prayer and something. I forgot what it was. Essentially for the deen to be enacted, right? For the Sharia to be upheld, for the ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to happen in the dunya, in this dunyawi world. That's why wealth was given to human beings. So you can use it for that purpose. If you're not using it in any way towards that purpose, first and foremost, within your own home, you're not establishing it through the way you do your monetary setup and expenditure and planning for your family so that you budget for time and free time and tarbiyah as well. You're not using your wealth right. So, yeah.
SubhanAllah.
Anything
Thank
else?
No, thank you so much for this conversation. It always helps me to see things in a different way when I talk to you.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakumullah khair. I really appreciate you making time. Alhamdulillah. May Allah accept it. Rabbil Alameen.
Thank you for joining us today on the Connections podcast. To stay updated on the work we do at the Silla Initiative, sign up for our newsletter at the bottom of our homepage at thesillainitiative.org. You can also subscribe to our channel on YouTube and Telegram, or follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum.